The holographic display cast blue light across the conference room as Captain Lee Jun studied the alien sitting across from him. Admiral Vextar was huge even sitting down. His gray skin looked like metal, and his 4 red eyes stared at the human captain without blinking. The hegemony uniform he wore was covered in symbols that meant nothing to Lee, but the way Vextar carried himself said everything. This was a being used to getting what he wanted. Captain Lee, the translator box on the table turned Vextar's rough, growling voice into clear human speech. Your people are wasting their gifts. Join with us and we will give you technology your species has never dreamed of. Faster ships, better weapons, machines that can turn dead worlds into gardens. Commander Park Min-ho sat beside his captain, reading through the offer on his data pad. Lee could see the numbers and they were impressive. The hegemony was offering to advance human technology by hundreds of years. Energy weapons that could cut through anything. Ship engines that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months. Terraforming equipment that could make any planet livable for humans. But Lee's answer was the same as it had been for 5 years of war. Admiral, the Terran Council thanks you for your generous offer. But our position has not changed. Humanity will remain neutral in this conflict. Vextar's 4 eyes grew smaller, like he was squinting in anger. You think neutrality makes you wise, human. But in this galaxy the weak are eaten by the strong. You cannot stay on the sidelines forever. The alien admiral stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow over the human officers. When your colonies burn and your people cry for help, remember that you chose to stand alone. He turned and walked out, his heavy boots making the deck plates ring with each step. After the hegemony delegation left, Park looked at his captain. Sir, that's the 3rd time this month. The Democratic Alliance was here just last week with almost the same offer. Lee nodded and walked to the window looking out at the stars. Space looked peaceful from here, but he knew that out there 2 massive alien empires were tearing each other apart. Whole solar systems had become battlegrounds. Billions had died already. Both sides see us as weapons they could use, Min-ho. They don't understand that some fights aren't worth joining. The truth was more complicated than that. Lee had read the classified reports. Humanity had studied both sides carefully. The hegemony ruled through fear and strength. They conquered worlds and forced the people there to serve them. The Democratic Alliance claimed to fight for freedom, but they had their own dark secrets. Worlds that refused to join them often faced economic blockades that starved millions. Both empires wanted humanity because humans had proven to be surprisingly good at war. Not just the fighting part but the thinking part. Human military tactics had evolved through thousands of years of conflict on Earth. Human soldiers were adaptable, creative, and willing to sacrifice themselves for their comrades. Most importantly, humans seemed to understand something that many alien species did not, that sometimes the best way to win a war was to avoid fighting it at all. On Earth, millions of miles away, Director Kim So-young stood before the Terran Council in the Great Hall of New Geneva Station. The station orbited Earth's moon, its white walls and curved ceilings designed to make visitors feel peaceful. Representatives from all of humanity's colonies attended the meeting through holographic displays. The pressure is increasing, Kim reported, her voice echoing in the large chamber. Colony administrators from 12 different worlds report daily contact from both factions. They're offering everything: military protection, advanced medical technology, exclusive trading rights, even territorial expansion into unclaimed systems. Council President Choi Hyun-woo listened from his seat at the center of the curved table. At 68 years old, he had led humanity through its first contact with alien life, through the establishment of interstellar colonies, and now through 5 years of galactic war. His face showed the weight of those decisions. Director Kim, he said quietly, what is your assessment of colonial morale? The colonists trust the Council's judgment, sir. But they're scared. Both factions have made it clear that neutrality may not be an option much longer. Some colonies report hegemony ships conducting training exercises near their borders. Alliance vessels have been scanning our defense installations. Another council member spoke up. Mr. President, perhaps it's time to reconsider. If we must choose a side, the Alliance at least shares some of our values. Choi shook his head slowly. Councillor Park, we've been through this. The Alliance may speak of freedom and democracy, but their actions tell a different story. 3 systems that refuse to join them are now under economic siege. Children are starving because the Alliance controls the trade routes. He stood up and walked to the great window that looked out at Earth. The blue and green planet turned slowly below them, peaceful and beautiful. Our answer hasn't changed in 5 years and it won't change today. Humanity thrives through cooperation and discovery, not conquest. We will not be drawn into a war that serves no one but the warmongers. But even as the Council maintained its official position, the reality was more complex. Human ships moved constantly through space, providing aid wherever it was needed. When refugee ships fled from battle zones, human vessels appeared to guide them to safety. When colonies were cut off from supplies by the fighting, human merchants found ways through the blockades. When hospitals filled with wounded soldiers from both sides, human doctors treated them all without asking which flag they served. The galaxy's two great powers saw these actions as proof of human weakness. They were wrong. Dr. Yang Sujin pulled off her surgical gloves and dropped them into the disposal unit. Another patient saved. The hegemony soldier on the table was breathing normally now, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The plasma burn that had nearly killed him was sealed and healing. Doctor, Nurse Park Jiwoo approached quietly, her face showing concern. The hegemony commander wants to speak with you. He's angry about something. Yang sighed and walked toward the medical bay entrance. Through the transparent doors, she could see Commander Zarvek waiting in the corridor. The tall, reptilian alien was pacing back and forth, his scaled hands clenched into fists. What does he want? Yang asked. He's demanding to know why we're treating Alliance prisoners in the same facility as his soldiers. He says it's against military protocol. Yang's expression hardened. She had been a doctor for 15 years, and she had taken an oath to help all living beings. War didn't change that. Tell the commander that injured beings need medical care, no matter what uniform they wear. Inform him that all patients receive equal treatment aboard this vessel. Park Jiwoo nodded and went to deliver the message. Yang could hear raised voices in the corridor, but she didn't care. The hegemony commander could complain all he wanted. She would continue to save lives. In the engineering section 3 decks below, Chief Engineer Kim Tae-sung was studying a massive hole in the side of a refugee transport ship. The vessel was docked to the human ship Compassion through an emergency airlock. Kim could see straight through the damaged hull into space beyond. Captain Oaerum joined him, her boots echoing on the metal deck. How bad is it, Chief? Kim pointed to the twisted metal around the hole. This ship took direct hits from military weapons. Look at these burn marks, plasma cannons, probably from a hegemony cruiser. But this was a civilian vessel. No weapons, no military equipment. Just families trying to escape the war. How many survivors? 43 beings from 6 different species. Mostly women and children. They'd been traveling for weeks, trying to find somewhere safe. Captain O looked at the damage and shook her head. Can we repair it? Kim smiled for the first time that day. Give me 12 hours, Captain. Human engineering tends to be resourceful. The truth was that Kim had been expecting this kind of challenge. Human ships carried repair equipment that could fix almost anything. They also carried spare parts for dozens of different alien ship designs. Other species thought humans were just being helpful. They didn't realize that humans had been studying alien technology for years, learning how every system worked. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were happening every day. Human ships appeared wherever the fighting was worst, their crews working without rest to save lives and repair damage. The vessel Hope had evacuated an entire colony before hegemony forces arrived. The research ship Discovery had guided a convoy of medical supplies through Alliance territory to reach a planet where both sides wounded were dying without treatment. On the neutral station Sanctuary 7, Ambassador Lee Dehai addressed a meeting of the Galactic Refugee Commission. Representatives from both warring factions sat around the curved table, though they refused to look at each other. Honored delegates, Lee began, humanity has now established 14 safe zones in neutral space. Any species seeking sanctuary from this conflict will find protection there. We have medical facilities, schools for children, and work opportunities for adults who want to rebuild their lives. The hegemony representative, a stocky being with gray skin and small black eyes, made a sound like laughter. Ambassador, your species plays at being galactic peacekeepers. You have soft hearts and weak ships. This war will end when the strong defeat the weak, not when refugees find places to hide. The Alliance diplomat, a tall humanoid with blue skin and silver hair, nodded in agreement. The hegemony representative is correct about one thing. Your compassion is admirable, but it's naive. This war will be won through military strength, not through mercy. Lee kept her expression neutral, but inside she was thinking about things the aliens didn't know. They saw human ships as weak because humans didn't carry obvious weapons. They saw human crews as soft because they spent their time healing instead of fighting. What they didn't see was how efficiently those merchant vessels moved through space that was supposed to be too dangerous for civilian traffic. They didn't notice how quickly human research stations could coordinate rescue operations across multiple star systems. They didn't realize that human crews maintained perfect discipline under pressure that made veteran alien warriors break down and cry. Back on the Compassion, Dr. Yang was checking on her patients when alarms started sounding throughout the ship. She looked up at the nearest communication panel as Captain O's voice echoed through the medical bay. All hands, prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace. We've received a distress call from the Kepler system. Alliance and Hegemony fleets are engaging in orbit around a civilian space station. Estimated casualties in the thousands. Yang began checking her medical supplies. She would need more surgical equipment, more medicine, more beds. But somehow she knew they would manage. Humans always managed. Chief Kim was already working on the refugee transport when the announcement came. He looked up at his repair crew, 3 humans and 2 aliens who had asked to help. You heard the captain, he said. 12 hours just became 6 hours. Let's show these refugees what human engineering can do. The aliens watching didn't understand that they were seeing something remarkable. They thought humans were simply good at fixing things and helping others. They didn't realize they were watching a species that had turned survival into an art form. Admiral Kexthor stood in the command center of his flagship, staring at the holographic map that showed the current state of the war. Red dots marked hegemony-controlled systems, while blue dots showed Alliance territory. There were far too many blue dots and not enough red ones. The war is not going as we planned, he said to himself, his forearms crossed behind his back. His gray skin looked darker than usual under the red lighting of the bridge. Commander Voreke, his second-in-command, approached carefully. Kexthor had been in a bad mood for weeks, ever since the Alliance had captured 3 more hegemony worlds. Sir, Voreke said quietly, we've lost another supply convoy. The Alliance is cutting off our trade routes faster than we can establish new ones. Kexthor's mandibles clicked together in frustration. The hegemony had better weapons and stronger ships, but somehow the Alliance kept winning battles. Their commanders were smarter, their soldiers more willing to fight, and their tactics were unpredictable. What about the humans? Kexthor asked. Have they agreed to join us yet? No, sir. They continue to refuse all offers. Our diplomats report that the humans remain committed to neutrality. Kexthor turned away from the tactical display and looked out at the stars through the main view screen. Somewhere out there, human ships were moving through space, providing aid to anyone who needed it. The humans had resources, technology, and most importantly, they had something the hegemony needed, strategic thinking that could change the course of the war. Commander Voreke, Kexthor said slowly, perhaps it's time the humans understood the consequences of remaining neutral in this conflict. Voreke's yellow eyes brightened. Sir, our intelligence reports indicate that New Geneva colony is lightly defended. It's primarily a research installation, but it houses their xenobiology program. The facility is important to human science. Kexthor's mandibles clicked in what might have been approval. Interesting. And what kind of defenses does this colony have? Minimal, sir. Standard civilian shields, no military installations. The colony relies on its neutral status for protection. A plan began forming in Kexthor's mind. It was simple and brutal, but it would achieve 2 goals at once. Commander, prepare the 3rd battle group for immediate departure. We're going to send the humans a message they won't forget. Sir, if we attack a neutral colony we won't attack it, Commander. The Alliance will attack it. At least that's what the humans will believe. Prepare our ships with Alliance identification codes and weapons signatures. When New Geneva burns, the humans will think their peaceful neutrality couldn't protect them. They'll have no choice but to seek our protection. Voreke nodded slowly. A clever strategy, Admiral. Destroying the colony will demonstrate human vulnerability, and blaming the Alliance will drive them into our arms. 3 days later, on New Geneva colony, Director Yoon Jae-hyun was walking through the research facility during his evening inspection. The colony was beautiful in the setting sunlight, white buildings surrounded by gardens where plants from dozens of different worlds grew together. It was meant to be a symbol of peace and cooperation between species. Dr. Lim, he called to the head of the xenobiology department who was sitting on a bench reading reports. How are our newest arrivals settling in? Dr. Lim Yun-soo looked up and smiled, though her face showed tiredness. She had been working 18-hour days to help process the constant stream of refugees who arrived seeking safety. The Kalari children are doing well in our schools, she said. They're quick learners and they seem happy. We even have some hegemony civilian families who arrived last week. Yoon raised an eyebrow. Hegemony civilians? That's unusual. They're fleeing the conscription sweeps on their home worlds. The hegemony military is forcing all adult males to join the army, regardless of age or health. These families chose exile over forced service. Yoon nodded sadly. He had heard reports of the hegemony's desperate recruitment methods. Entire planets were being stripped of their adult populations to feed the war machine. How many refugees are we housing now? Almost 8,000, Lim replied. From 14 different species. The colony population has nearly doubled in the past 6 months. Their conversation was interrupted by Security Chief Nam Ho-jin, who approached them at a quick walk. His usually calm expression showed concern. Director, Nam said urgently, we're detecting multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Configuration matches hegemony battle cruisers. Yoon sighed and stood up from the bench. Probably another recruitment attempt. They've been getting more persistent lately. Activate standard diplomatic frequencies and prepare the usual response. Nam nodded and spoke into his communication device. Control, this is Security Chief Nam. Incoming hegemony vessels, likely diplomatic mission. Prepare standard neutral greeting protocols. For a few moments, everything seemed normal. The three humans continued their conversation while Nam coordinated with the control center. Then the sky lit up with fire. The first energy blast struck the main research building, vaporizing the entire structure in a flash of superheated plasma. The explosion shook the ground and shattered windows for miles around. That wasn't a diplomatic visit, Nam shouted over the sound of screaming sirens. He was already running toward the emergency command center, speaking rapidly into his communicator. All security teams, this is not a drill. We are under attack. Repeat, New Geneva colony is under attack. Director Yoon grabbed Dr. Lim's arm and pulled her toward the nearest shelter. Around them, people were running in all directions, humans, aliens, children crying for their parents. Get everyone to the emergency shelters. Nam's voice echoed from speakers throughout the colony. Prioritize children and injured. All medical personnel report to emergency stations. But even as the evacuation began, more energy blasts rained down from orbit. The hegemony ships had positioned themselves around the planet and were conducting a systematic bombardment. One by one, the colony's buildings vanished in flashes of light and clouds of debris. The attack lasted 3 hours. When it finally ended, New Geneva colony no longer existed. The emergency meeting room was silent except for the sound of breathing. President Choi Hyun-woo sat at the head of the long table, his hands folded in front of him. His face looked like it was made of stone. Around the table, the most powerful people in human space waited for him to speak. Director Kim So-young stood at the front of the room, holding a data pad with shaking hands. She had never delivered a report like this one. Mr. President, she began, her voice barely above a whisper, I can confirm the complete destruction of New Geneva colony. Total casualties are 12,000 beings. The room remained silent, but several council members closed their eyes in pain. Kim continued reading from her pad. 4,200 humans died in the attack. 7,800 refugees from 14 different species were also killed. Among the dead are 400 hegemony civilian families who had sought sanctuary on New Geneva. Defense Minister Young Woo-sung leaned forward in his chair. Director, you're saying that hegemony forces killed their own people? Yes, sir. The families had fled from forced military service on their home worlds. They came to New Geneva seeking protection from the war. President Choi spoke for the first time since the meeting began. His voice was quiet, but every person in the room could hear the deadly calm in his words. What do our monitoring stations tell us about the attack? Defense Minister Young opened his own data pad. Sir, our deep space sensors recorded everything. The attacking ships made no attempt to identify targets or avoid civilian areas. They conducted a systematic orbital bombardment designed to kill everyone on the planet. Duration of the attack? 3 hours and 17 minutes, sir. They took their time. Fleet Admiral Shin Eun-ji had been silent throughout the briefing, but now she stood up slowly. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but everyone in the room knew her reputation. She had served in the unification wars on Earth 30 years ago, when humanity had nearly destroyed itself in global conflict. Mr. President, she said, her voice steady and clear, I request immediate activation of Protocol 7. A chill settled over the chamber. Protocol 7 was humanity's final military option, the one they had sworn never to use again after the horrors of the unification wars. It hadn't been mentioned in official documents for decades. Defense Minister Young looked around the table at the other council members. Mr. President, I second Admiral Shin's request. The hegemony has made their choice. Now we make ours. President Choi stood up and walked to the large window that showed Earth turning slowly below them. For 5 years he had kept humanity out of the Galactic War. For 5 years he had chosen peace over revenge, mercy over justice. But some choices could only be made once. Protocol 7 is authorized, he said without turning around. God help us all. Within 1 hour, coded transmissions began reaching every human vessel in space. The messages were short and used language that sounded innocent to anyone who might intercept them. But every human captain knew what the codes meant. Captain Osram was in her quarters aboard the medical vessel Compassion when the message arrived. She read it 3 times, then walked to her wall safe and removed a sealed envelope that had been there for 5 years. Inside were new orders, written in her own handwriting during a meeting she had hoped would never happen. She activated the ship's communication system. All hands, this is the captain. Report to battle stations immediately. This is not a drill. Chief Engineer Kim Tae-sung was in the medical bay when the announcement came. He had been checking on the hegemony soldier they had saved just days before. The alien was sitting up in bed, talking to his wife through a video link to his home world. Kim's expression changed as he heard the captain's words. The gentle, caring look that had defined him for years vanished, replaced by something cold and hard. Chief Kim, to the bridge, came the captain's voice over the intercom. Kim arrived to find Captain O studying star charts on the main display. Captain? Chief, how long to convert the medical bays to combat configuration? Kim's answer came without hesitation. 12 hours to full conversion, sir. Our medical equipment was designed with multiple applications in mind. This was the secret that alien observers had never understood. Human ships carried medical scanners that could also function as targeting systems. Their surgical lasers could be reconfigured as weapons. Their life support systems could generate combat gases. Every piece of peaceful technology on human vessels had been designed to serve 2 purposes. Across human space, similar conversations were happening on hundreds of ships. The merchant vessel Prosperity began extending weapon barrels from compartments that had been hidden behind false cargo holds. The research station Deep Space Nine activated military-grade sensor arrays that could track ship movements across entire star systems. The exploration ship New Horizon revealed that its scientific equipment included enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. Admiral Shin Eun-ji stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Retribution. The massive vessel had been disguised as a deep space research platform for years, studying stellar phenomena and remote systems. Now its true purpose was revealed as weapon systems emerged from concealed bays and military shields powered up for the first time since the ship's construction. Around the Retribution, other ships appeared as if from nowhere. Vessels that had been dismissed as harmless exploration craft now moved in perfect military formation. Their crews worked with precision that spoke of years of secret training and preparation. The galaxy's peaceful humans were showing their true nature at last. They had never been weak or naive. They had simply been waiting for someone to give them a reason to stop being merciful. That reason had finally come. 6 months had passed since the destruction of New Geneva Colony, and the galaxy looked very different now. Admiral Kex Thor sat in a small detention cell aboard the human ship Justice, staring at the metal walls that had become his world. His gray skin had grown pale during his captivity, and his 4 arms hung limply at his sides. The cell was clean and comfortable. The humans had given him books to read, decent food to eat, and medical care when he needed it. But it was still a prison, and he was still a prisoner of a species he had thought was weak. Captain Lee Min-young approached the transparent barrier that separated them. She was a small woman, barely reaching Kex Thor's shoulder, but the former hegemony admiral had learned to fear her quiet voice and calm eyes. "Admiral," she said politely, "you requested to speak with me." Kex Thor stood up slowly and walked to the barrier. "Captain Lee, I need to understand something. Your species, we studied you for years. You were supposed to be peaceful. Wait, how did you destroy my entire fleet in less than 3 months?" Lee's expression didn't change. "We were peaceful by choice, Admiral, not because we were unable to fight. You forced us to make a different choice." "But your ships," Kex Thor continued, his voice getting louder, "they were medical vessels, research stations, cargo haulers. How did they become instruments of war?" "They always were instruments of war," Lee replied calmly. "We simply chose not to use them that way until you gave us no other option." The truth was more complicated than Lee made it sound. For decades, human engineers had designed every ship, every station, every piece of equipment to serve multiple purposes. Medical scanners could become targeting systems with a software update. Cargo holds could hide weapon batteries. Research facilities could coordinate military operations across entire star systems. But the real secret wasn't the hidden weapons. It was the hidden training. While other species saw human crews as soft civilians, those same crews had been practicing military drills in secret for years. Every merchant captain knew fleet tactics. Every medical officer understood combat medicine. Every research scientist could read tactical displays and coordinate battle plans. Across the galaxy, the results of humanity's hidden preparation were visible everywhere. Hegemony military installations that had once seemed invincible now flew human flags. Hegemony fleets that had terrorized civilian populations were either captured or destroyed. Most importantly, the systematic oppression that had defined hegemony rule was ending. On the world of Kepler Prime, former hegemony slaves were building their first democratic government under human supervision. On Vega Station, refugees who had fled the war were returning to homes that were finally safe. Across dozens of systems, species that had been forced to serve the hegemony were learning what freedom meant. The Alliance had tried to take advantage of the hegemony's collapse, moving to occupy former hegemony worlds. They quickly discovered that human forces were already there, and that humans had very definite ideas about how liberated worlds should be governed. On the rebuilt New Geneva Memorial Station, President Choi Hyun-woo stood before representatives from dozens of species. The station was beautiful, with white walls and curved ceilings that made visitors feel peaceful. But everyone in the room knew that this peaceful place was protected by human ships that could destroy entire fleets. Honored delegates, President Choi began, 6 months ago humanity was forced to abandon our neutrality. Today I want to explain what that means for the future of this galaxy. In the audience, Alliance Admiral Rexon sat uncomfortably in his chair. His own forces had found themselves politely but firmly ordered to withdraw from systems they had hoped to occupy. When he had protested, human peacekeepers had demonstrated their capabilities in ways that left no doubt about who was really in charge now. The galaxy has learned that humanity's greatest strength was never our technology, Choi continued. It was our choice to use that strength only when necessary. We chose peace for decades, and we would choose it again if circumstances allowed. Dr. Yang Soo-jin stood near the memorial wall, where names in dozens of languages honored those who had died at New Geneva. Her left arm was in a brace, a reminder of her own injuries during the attack. She had been trapped in the medical center when the bombardment began, and had spent hours treating wounded refugees while hegemony ships rained fire from above. What happens now? Admiral Rexon asked. Will humanity become the new galactic empire? Ambassador Lee Dehai stepped forward to answer. Admiral, we have no interest in ruling other species. Our goal is simple, to ensure this never happens again. Species that can coexist peacefully will govern themselves. Those who choose aggression will find themselves supervised. The word supervised sent a chill through the room. Everyone had seen what human supervision meant. Hegemony worlds that had resisted human occupation found their governments replaced with human-appointed administrators. Hegemony military officers who had committed war crimes found themselves in detention cells like Admiral Kexthor's. But the supervision wasn't harsh or cruel. Human administrators focused on building democratic institutions and protecting civilian populations. Human peacekeepers worked to prevent conflicts rather than win them. Most importantly, humans seemed genuinely interested in eventually returning control to local populations once those populations proved they could govern themselves peacefully. After the formal meeting ended, Dr. Yang walked alone to the memorial wall. Thousands of names were carved into the black stone, representing every being who had died in the New Geneva attack. We didn't want to be soldiers, she whispered to the memory of her fallen colleagues. But when the choice was made for us, we chose to be the best soldiers the galaxy had ever seen. Outside the station, human patrol fleets continued their endless watch. The peace they maintained wasn't enforced through oppression or fear. It was enforced through the clear understanding that humanity's mercy was a gift, not a weakness, and that gift could be withdrawn from those who proved unworthy of it. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the nature of true strength. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy was the one who chose not to fight, until fighting became the only option left.